Over the summer, Apple was one of the first tech giants to ban Alex Jones and InfoWars from its platform. It was August 6th, and Apple removed most InfoWars content from its podcast hosting services, citing hate speech violations. To the outside observer, this move looked like the first domino that tipped the rest of the tiles. That same day, Facebook banned InfoWars, echoing Apple. Alex Jones committed hate speech violations. Then YouTube banned InfoWars, saying Alex Jones was trying to circumvent a 90-day ban on streaming that had already been enacted against him. After initially saying Alex Jones did nothing wrong, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey then said, "Whoops, just kidding, guys. Turns out he violates our terms too, and he's gone now. There was actually a ton of abusive behavior I'm just now seeing for the very first time." And there were subsequent bannings on several smaller internet platforms. Even PayPal came around and said, "Nope, if you want to engage in a voluntary and perfectly legal financial exchange with Alex Jones, we won't facilitate it." It would seem apparent that Apple CEO Tim Cook or one of his underlings had at least some degree of coordination with the rest of these platforms, but that is a charge the ban firmly denies.
Did you coordinate with other tech companies to kick off Alex Jones?
No. I've never even had a conversation about this with any tech company.
Why not?
But why? We make our decisions independently. And I think that's important.
Yeah, we all just decided independently to take the exact same action, independently on the exact same day, independently against a common political enemy. What an independent coincidence. Independent or not, the effort didn't go unnoticed. This week, Tim Cook was recognized for that move, given a legitimate censorship award from the ADL, the so-called Anti-Defamation League, organized around combating hate symbols like Pepe the Frog, making sure your Starbucks coffee is neither too hot nor too racist until they get kicked out for being pro-Israel and pro-cop, and lecturing other Jews about what Jew jokes they're allowed to make, if any. Yes, that ADL gave Tim Cook recognition for his fantastic and supposedly humanitarian work against the fundamental human right of free speech. But Apple's a private company. Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying Apple must host InfoWars. I'm just saying I don't accept the idea that censorship efforts are moral, virtuous, or heroic. Anyway, this thing is called the Courage Against Hate Award, the first of its kind from the ADL, though I'm surprised they didn't give themselves the award for their own courage against hate, disabling the ratings and comments on the video of the presentation. ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt introduces Tim Cook, specifically praising him for banning Alex Jones off of Apple platforms.
Apple was the first company to remove Alex Jones's hateful, anti-government conspiratorial rants from their platform.
As well as standing up to racism.
When he saw racism, he told his employees that he would not stand for it. Racism does not represent our values, he said.
Discrimination based on race doesn't represent our values. We much prefer discrimination based on viewpoint.
Tim has advocated for equal treatment for all.
Yeah, except for Alex Jones, who doesn't count in the definition of all because we disagree with him.
I'm incredibly excited about our next speaker, who I know will not only add spark to our conversation, I am certain he will inspire us.
Well, thank God. If there's one person who could actually make Tim Cook look like an exciting spark, it's this dude. The major quote from Tim that's getting a lot of play is this one. He says that his company has a moral obligation to combat so-called hate, and to ignore that obligation would be sinful.
I believe the most sacred thing that each of us is given is our judgment, our morality, our own innate desire to separate right from wrong. Choosing to set that responsibility aside at a moment of trial is a sin.
Setting aside the implied idea that political censorship is righteous, I disagree fully. I think that efforts to silence viewpoints you don't like are one of the most fundamentally unjust aggressions you can take against your fellow man. But beyond that, what's frustrating is Tim Cook has no coherent explanation for what this moral imperative he's describing actually means. He just uses ambiguous terms and phrases like good judgment and the innate desire to separate right from wrong, wrong, without actually giving right and wrong any clear definition.
My friends, if we can't be clear on moral questions like these, then we've got big problems.
Sure, Tim, clarity is absolutely needed for us to understand why you think viewpoint discrimination is actually a good thing. The trouble is, every time we ask you, you give unclear answers like this one.
Why? Because it's the right thing to do.
It's the same type of answer you gave that Vice reporter, too.
But at what point were you like, okay, that's it, Alex Jones has to go?
I don't want to get into a singular kind of event, but I think there's enough there that reasonable people could agree that if you're going to curate, that should be all.
You know, reasonable people who understand the difference between right and wrong. The trouble is, every single injustice committed in human history was done by people who viewed themselves as reasonable in pursuit of a greater good. Take your pick in the lottery of human injustice, from the communist breadlines to the fascist concentration camps. The people behind these atrocities believed they were good and reasonable. Simply declaring something good and reasonable does not magically make it so. You'll have to supplement that declaration of reason with some actual reason. And normally I don't like to invoke the Nazis, but in this case I did it because Tim did it first.
History is full of examples of what can happen when those with power and those who ought to have good judgment instead look the other way. The 80th anniversary of Kristallnacht. She remembers the shattered windows, the fine china and furniture thrown into the streets, the businesses smashed, the curses of the mob.
Well, since this turned into a history lecture, do you know what happened before the Kristallnacht? They burned unsuitable books en masse in an attempt to synchronize culture with the desired political ideology. They sabotaged information deemed incompatible with the right thing, at least as they saw it, and they did it because all the reasonable people agreed upon it. But maybe that's just a bad example. Maybe true censorship has never been tried. But I'd like Tim to give me any example, at any point in history, where censorship or efforts to control or eliminate certain viewpoints resulted in more human freedom, more human progress, a better human condition. I'll wait, but I think the list is pretty short. Like never short. Beyond the inability to define this supposedly self-evident right and wrong, beyond this highly selective history lesson, Tim's reasoning is, in many parts, entirely contradictory. At one point, speaking about the gay community, he describes the importance of listening to perspectives different from yours, and he does this seemingly obliviously in the context of a speech about the importance of silencing perspectives different from yours.
It moves us to speak up for the LGBTQ community, for those whose differences can make them a target for violence and scorn. We do so not only because these unique and uncommon perspectives can open our eyes to new ways of thinking, but because our own dignity moves us to see the dignity in others.
Listening to a gay guy is good because it expands your perspective. But listening to Alex Jones is bad because it expands your perspective into unacceptable territory. So I guess Alex Jones just has to come out as gay, and we'll find out which of these competing premises wins out. In another stunning display of oblivious irony, Tim warns about the danger of treating people like computers.
Apple is a technology company. But we never forget that the devices we make are imagined by human minds, built by human hands, and are meant to improve human lives. I sometimes say that I worry less about computers that think like people and more about people that think like computers.
Then why are you trying to program people like computers? Why do you view it as your moral obligation to program the correct viewpoints into the system? If treating people like humans is so crucial, why would you sabotage the uniquely human capacity to think and speak freely. The reason Tim's remarks are so difficult to understand, so contradictory, so outright incoherent, is because it's ad hoc reasoning. He's making it up as he goes. Tim Cook would prefer that certain viewpoints be silenced. He just doesn't want to say that outright. So he obfuscates with whatever explanation he can grasp in the moment with an appeal to the holy spirit of social justice for good measure. I'd have much more respect for him if he simply said, yeah, there are certain opinions I don't like, and those opinions aren't allowed on my platform. I'd still disagree with that approach, but at least it'd be honest. Maybe even a display of courage requisite of the award he's receiving. And that might be the most outrageous thing about this entire display, the title of the award. The idea that censorship efforts against so-called hate are courage against hate. You want courage? How about actually confronting those supposedly hateful ideas? Discuss with Alex Jones. Debate with Alex Jones. Use your massive platform to show everyone how silly and foolish he really is, and how obviously superior your ideas are. It's not courageous to plug your ears and close your eyes and sing la 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 la. It's not courageous to hide ideas rather than engage with them. It's not courageous to think that you ought to decide for others what information is suitable for their consumption. This is the Cowardice Against Hate Award. This is the Cowardice Masquerading as Moral Virtue Award. And the disguise is totally flimsy. You're not looking out for anyone if you're trying to control everyone. Morality or control? Pick one and stick with it. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christensen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.